You know, heart failure has always been one of those really tough nuts to crack in medicine, especially once a patient gets out of the hospital. But what if we could listen to the heart in a completely new way? I mean, using hard, objective data to guide treatment and actually keep people healthy at home. Okay, let's get into it.
For the longest time, the stats have been, well, they've been pretty bleak. About half, 50% of patients who are hospitalized for acute heart failure ended up right back in the hospital, or worse, they passed away within just 1 year. That's basically a coin flip for a terrible outcome. It was a huge problem that desperately needed a new way of thinking.
Doctors literally call this the revolving door of heart failure. You can see why, right? A patient gets treated, they feel better, they go home, but then sooner or later, the symptoms creep back, and boom, they are right back where they started. The old way of managing this really relied on subjective things, asking a patient how they feel, and that just wasn't enough to stop the next crisis. So, let's talk about a totally new way of listening. We're going to look at a technology called acoustic cardiography, and it gives us real objective data about how the heart is actually pumping. It's called acoustic cardiography, or ACG for short, and what it does is actually pretty brilliant. It mashes up two key pieces of information: the heart's electrical signals, which you get from an ECG, with super sensitive recordings of the actual sounds the heart makes. Put them together, and suddenly doctors have this incredibly complete picture of the heart's mechanical performance. So the first key thing it measures is something called electromechanical activation time, or EMAT. Just think of it like a tiny delay. It's the gap between the heart's electrical system saying go and the heart muscle actually contracting to pump blood. The longer that delay, the more the heart is struggling. It's a direct measure of efficiency. And this is the perfect way to think about it. A healthy heart, that's like flipping a switch and the light comes on instantly. But a struggling heart, well, there's a noticeable lag. EMAT is what measures that lag with pinpoint precision. All right, the second piece of the puzzle is this thing called the third heart sound, or S3. The best way to describe it is like a low-pitched distress echo. It's a sound that just shouldn't be there. And when you hear it, it's a huge red flag that a heart chamber is getting overfilled with fluid and is under a lot of stress, a classic sign that heart failure is getting worse. And this right here is the big shift. This is the whole ballgame. We're moving away from the subjective world of, so how are you feeling today, and into the objective world of, okay, what does the data say? Instead of just relying on how a patient describes their symptoms, doctors now have hard numbers, these EMAT and S3 metrics, to guide every single decision. But look, a cool piece of tech is one thing. The real question is, does it actually work for patients? Does this data-driven approach really make a difference? Well, it was time to put it to the ultimate test. So that was the big question a major clinical trial set out to answer. Could you really improve patient outcomes? Could you break that awful cycle of rehospitalization and death by guiding treatment with these objective numbers? The way they set up the trial was super clear and solid. They got 225 patients and randomly split them into two groups. One group got the usual care, guided by symptoms. The other group's care was guided by the new ACG data. Then they just watched and waited, following everyone for a full year. And this is where you really see the difference. The goal for the symptom-guided group was to make people feel less tired or short of breath. But the EMAT-guided group, they had concrete numerical targets to hit. Their doctors were adjusting medications to get the EMAT score below 15% and the S3 sound score below 5. Their care was driven 100% by the data. Okay, so after a full year of tracking these two groups, the results were in. This was it. The moment of truth for acoustic cardiography. So, back to the big question, did this objective, data-driven approach actually work? And the answer? Oh yeah, a big yes. So get this, when you look at the entire study, the patients managed with this new tech had a hazard ratio of 0.61. What that means in plain English is that they had a 39% lower risk of being rehospitalized or dying within that year compared to the other group. That's not a small improvement, that is massive. But here's where the story gets really incredible. When the researchers drilled down and looked specifically at the sickest patients, the ones who had the worst EMAT scores when the study started, the impact of this technology was just profound. For this group, the sickest of the sick, the hazard ratio dropped all the way down to 0.32. That's a stunning 68% lower risk of rehospitalization or death.
For the most vulnerable people, this data-driven care wasn't just helpful, it was an absolute game changer.
And this might be the most important number of all. For that same high-risk group, managing their care with this data was associated with a 67% lower risk of dying from any cause. It wasn't just preventing hospital trips, it was quite literally saving lives. So these results were a huge proof of concept in the trial. The next logical step? Well, it was to get this technology out of the hospital and into people's homes where it could do the most good.
And this quote right here just nails the whole idea. The vision was to create a simple system that could monitor heart failure from anywhere, making it super easy for people to use right in their own living rooms.
While that vision, it's now a real thing. It's called the Audicore RPM system. It's a small, handheld device a patient uses at home. It captures that same critical data, EMA and S3, and then sends trends and alerts straight to their doctor. This means the doctor can step in before things get bad. It's so promising, in fact, that it's already received a breakthrough device designation from the FDA. So with all this amazing data, where does this technology actually stand right now? Let's take a quick look at the road ahead.
While the truth is, it's kind of a mixed bag at the moment. The clinical trial results are incredibly strong. You can't argue with them. But the technology is still considered investigational by some healthcare policies, and it hasn't made its way into the major clinical guidelines just yet. The general feeling is that we just need more large-scale studies to really seal the deal. But this whole story is about more than just one cool device. It leaves us with a really critical question about the future of medicine. Could simple, objective, data-driven tools just like this be the real key to finally empowering patients and doctors to manage all kinds of chronic diseases? Not just from a clinic, but from home. It really makes you think.